Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Ramesh Kumar, and I'm on a mission to bring value to the healthcare industry through improved transparency. And my goal from this podcast is to give you one aha moment that you can implement in your business, whether you're a TPA, broker, or an employer. In my day job, I run a company called Zaki Point Health that helps self-insured employers and their employees provide transparency, direction, and value by delivering a digital front door for the member that proactively steers them. Please like or share this podcast on your favorite podcasting tool so we can bring together a community of like-minded professionals. This program is brought to you by the Healthcare Administrators Association, HCAA. For over 40 years, HCAA has supported third-party administrators and the self-insured employer industry through educational opportunities from leading industry experts. For information on joining HCAA, please visit our website at hcaa.org. Our new sponsor for the 2024 season is Valence Health. Valence Health is the platform to simplify healthcare, the destination for employers, payers, providers, and members to reduce costs, improve quality, and elevate the healthcare experience. The Valence mindset and culture of innovation combines to create integrated solutions. Valence engages early and often to execute across the entire patient journey, from care navigation and management to payment integrity, plan performance, and provider verification. With a 99% client retention rate, Valence Health elevates the expectations to a new level of efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency where smarter, better, faster healthcare is possible. For more information, visit valencehealth.com.
Today we have a banger of an episode with Kari Niblack and Amy Gasborough, two amazing leaders in our self-funded space who are discussing transformational leadership and how they are approaching it and how they've done it over the last several decades in growing their different ventures. So in this episode, you are going to learn about how setting clear vision goes beyond just 3 years. It's a 10-year kind of vision that you need to set, how inclusivity and how taking different opinions really matter in building your company and serving your customers and having that impact. And beyond that, authenticity, what it really means, because that word has been thrown around quite a bit in the industry. And beyond that, they share strategies for empowering teams and how that is having an impact on the teams, but also, again, on the outcomes of their organizations. My favorite part from this episode is how do you build parallel brands, both for the company building the brand and their presence, but also your personal brand, and what that really, how they sit together and how it also then positively impacts company success. And they cite examples of improving, like reducing costs for clients, employee engagement, and overall better impact on their respective businesses. I hope you enjoy that. Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Kari. I am super excited to have you both. You are amazing leaders in our industry, and I have tracked you for many years. So I'm super excited for you to be here today with us in the studio to talk about transformational leadership as it relates to our self-funded industry. Rather than me try to introduce you to our audience, I'd love to turn the mic over to you. Maybe, Kari, you go first and Amy after that, about you and your journey to where you are today and what gives you the magic to talk about this topic. I'd love to hear that, Kari.
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to see you and Amy today. So starting with the journey, I am a prime example of what is so special about the self-funded industry. And that journey started over 30 years ago. We like to call that seasoned. I gave the year. We usually don't give the year, but it's a journey that started, like most people in the industry, at the very bottom. I started work in operations at third-party administrators and consistently worked my way up in the industry. And so the passion is real because, as I tell our clients, my journey has entailed doing all of the jobs within our organization. And I think that gives you a level of credibility that a lot of folks don't have, and not just our industry, but in all industries. So that leads into what we're going to talk about today, which is transformational leadership. And I think the ability to pull on those experiences resonates with our employees, our clients, my peers like you, other people in the industry, because you can relate real time to what they're experiencing. Whether that's an employee advancing their career, it's a client with a particular operational issue, or the vision to look forward in the industry with a heightened awareness of what's going to make us unique and differentiate. So all of that has been very beneficial to my career. It's very personal to me. And there is great joy in sharing those stories and that perspective information as a president of a company.
And I remember reading somewhere, at least, in your early part of your career, somebody really helped you, pulled you out of that very manual kind of job that you were doing and inspired you. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Her name was Mary, and I'll work backwards. I recently wrote her a long thank you letter, and she remembered me. And so she was very inspirational, one of my first mentors in the industry. I had started out in claims and was very tactical in nature, and I didn't even report to her. And she noticed I was asking questions. I was staying late. I was working my way through school. And she went to my supervisor and said, "Hey, this girl shows initiative. We have one spot left in the executive training class. Let's ask her if she wants to participate." And I have told this story many times. I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew it was more per hour, right? Financially. And I was like, sure. But the pivotal change in my career trajectory from that, I can't even put words. It's just a prime example of a mentor changing the trajectory of your career. Because what it let me do is come out and move through all the functional areas of the industry. So we came out and worked with the executives in all of the different areas. And so I like to tell this story at age 20, which is funny to me now as an attorney, but at age 20, I was working with our corporate counsel drafting Department of Insurance response letters. That's crazy. And you can't buy that type of experience. And so I am truly thankful to her. And every single day, I want to do that for other people. So I think it's just a prime example of how our industry continues to give back and how pivotal we can be as mentors to people's lives.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kari. Amy, how about you? What's brought you to this stage in your career?
Very much like Kari, I started exactly out of college with exactly zero knowledge about anything, transparently. And I had the good fortune to start with a founder-run, founder-owned business and a care management organization. And my first day on the job, he gave me a piece of paper with 14 things on it that he wanted accomplished. And I had no idea what any of these things meant. They get accounts receivable in order, get state licensure because it was a care management organization. So they needed to acquire licensure in a variety of states, assess computer systems. So there was just this very long list. And rather than say, oh gosh, I'm probably not the right person for the job, he really supported me and allowed me to jump both feet in and work with a bunch of phenomenal leaders within our organization who really helped and were very welcoming to me, to being, as some might call, very curious and full of questions in terms of what is going on. And for me to have that ability to kind of get into the weeds, understand all of the pipes and wires and what was working, what wasn't working, and the why behind it and why we were doing what we were doing, for me was just something, a feeling that I don't think I can ever replace. It was just absolutely phenomenal. From there, I was connected with, I would call my top mentor in this space, and still remains my number one mentor today, who gave me, after being there for many, many years, over 18 years, gave me a nice sit-down conversation and said, hey, you've done some amazing things here. You've done great work. I think it's time you look for other opportunities. And so that's what I think ultimately a good mentor should do. Not just listen to the pains and provide the warm hugs, but really be honest and be transparent in terms of where there is opportunity to continue to go further. So I was fortunate enough to take that advice and moved on from a long and comfortable career in care management to the other side of the equation and the cost containment side, and spent 6.5 years at a great cost containment organization in the space. And again, had some tremendous opportunities to work with some really innovative, really fun people and just great teammates, and do some really fun things and create programs, drive revenue, all the things that really for me are very, very exciting. And then did that for 6.5 years and got a little opportunity to move into a whole other space, still within the self-insured, and ended up on the pharmacy side. And so that's where I sit today as president of a pharmacy solutions provider for the self-insured marketplace. And it's been phenomenal. Again, walking into a great team, willing and tolerating all of my questions, because again, pharmacy was never my area of expertise, but I'm learning, and it's been a great ride so far.
I know both of you are leading great organizations, and Amy, you touched on this too. Transformation leadership is not just about being supportive and creating the right environment and challenging you through that environment and experience, but also to have that tough conversation to say, you know what, it's time for you to fly. It's time for you to do something else. And so that's kind of the balance is often pretty hard. Today, we're going to dig really deep into that. But before we do that, in your words, both of you, how you define transformational leadership as you're practicing it day in, day out?
I'll start. Transformational leadership to me is very active, and it's all about balance. So it's not about the tactical. Tactical is certainly a part of it, but someone said this, and I love this quote, so I can't take original content for it, but being a transformational leader is understanding that you don't have to choose between empathy and drive. And what they said was, it's like asking someone, do you want a heart or healthy lungs? You need both, right? So the balance is, you have to be a visionary, and you have to know all of the things that are necessary to be successful. And you have to think 3 to 5 to 10 years out. So the way I look at it is, you're highly visible, you're in this fishbowl microscope, and you have to be so forward thinking and at the same time so vulnerable to make all of that work, because all of the parts contribute to the whole, and you have to have the buy-in. So very much you have to aim for the solution that everyone can support, regardless of whether that's their first choice. Most of the time it's not. But you have to understand the stages in that process and be able to lead all the way through each of those steps.
So to you, it's about having that vision 10 or 3 years out, but also bringing people along, having the hearts, and being vulnerable to kind of say what you can and cannot accomplish, or your own personal vulnerability.
I think it's both, Ramesh, because in my seat, from my perspective, you have to be able to look at that from both sides. So it's both me being vulnerable and our people seeing that and understanding that and feeling that emotionally for a stronger connection. At the same time, I have to have the street credibility to understand tactically what we need to do and to be able to communicate that. So on every given day, I talk a lot about this as a mentor, both in my personal life and my professional life. You have to be able to balance, and you have to be able to move quickly. And I think transformational leadership is all about packaging that in your own personal style. I think the other thing I tell folks about it is, you don't have to emulate someone else. Part of the authenticity of a transformational leadership is that it's your own style. So Amy and I come at this a lot similarly, but also with some differences that make us who we are. And I think our people see that. And it's part of what's made us successful, in addition to the drive, is that vulnerability. And I tell our folks, I'm not the smartest person in the room every day, right? So their input, their critical thinking, the ability and confidence to share that, and the ability of me to lead that process is what makes a transformational leader.
How about you, Amy?
I think Carrie is spot on in so many ways. It really is about, first of all, having and being able to articulate what the vision is in a clear and understandable way so that everyone within your organization has a really good understanding of what it is that they're doing every day, why it's important, who they're impacting. All of these critical pieces from my perspective and my experience have really led to just phenomenal results. And not only being able to create the vision and articulate the vision, but also encourage others to Carrie's point, offer feedback, because I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. My goal is to make sure I've got subject matter experts and people who are in the weeds around me to say, okay, well, we need to think about it from this perspective. And have we considered A, B, and or C? And take that feedback and use those pieces of information to really make something good to great. And that's really one of the areas that has worked tremendously well in my experience in the last, I'll just say, many years in this space. And it's been key. Inclusion, articulation, and really listening to the people around you, and even getting feedback from maybe some of your detractors in some cases, or your competitors. Getting that type of feedback is critically important to driving growth, and not just driving growth, but being successful as well. Because you can have a fantastic top line, but if you have a team below you that's crumbling and is disengaged, unhappy, at some point in time, those 2 points will converge and you will find yourself in quite a mess.
So vision, enabling that team, but also that feedback loop, quite valuable pieces of that transformational leadership. Let's kind of dig into, I heard authenticity, that vulnerability, and how do you bring that into your leadership? What are some of the ways you have done that? Kari, maybe if you want to go first, because I've heard that word thrown around quite a lot. And I've also struggled to know what exactly authentic really means. How do I show up?
Yeah, I think you just show up and be real. And so I like to talk about, it's really about separating decisions from personalities and decisions from implementation. So the authenticity to say, on any given decision that we make, and we make decisions 24/7, I think that's the other thing, is the speed with which we have to do this, is that if you ask anyone that's worked for me in any company from the time I was very young, this is what they'll say. It's in my 360 feedback and from board feedback. If you ask her, she will tell you. The authenticity with which we make decisions, we give feedback to our employees, to partners, the authenticity with which we are humble, with which we use humor. It's funny, people talk all the time about working for me, and one of the things they always say, which is funny to me, but it rings true across many organizations, is they talk about my laughter in the workplace and how I am just real as a leader, and how they love it when they can hear me laughing, if I'm in the office or on video or whatever. And I love that. At first, it was a bit weird to get that type of feedback many, many years ago. But the older I've gotten, the more I've embraced that, because what it really says to me goes to the core of your question, and that is they feel that authenticity. I think the other part of that that's important for our younger listeners is you cannot be afraid to make tough decisions. You have to articulate the why, as Amy very accurately said early on in our conversation. But you have to be able to do that. You cannot sit by and not make decisions if you want to sit in the seat. And you have to know that some days you're going to be less popular than others, but you're being authentic and you're being true to what the mission and the vision is. And you have to understand all of that's necessary to have the respect and also have people buy into your credibility when you're making tough changes. So a specific example is when I have come into multiple companies to turn companies around, and the majority of those companies were family-originated companies who'd been in business a long time, my current one being no exception, 63 years. And we go from a family ownership dynamic to private equity investment, and then me being the next leader. That's a big culture change. And so what you have to do is decide immediately in that process, you have to be your authentic self, or those folks who have followed someone else for 63 years aren't going to buy into your vision and the change that we need to execute quickly. So I learned a very long time ago, not only is it my natural personality, but people get honesty and quick decision making, and I'm never paralyzed by decisions. Some of those sometimes aren't popular, but again, I think that comes with being authentic, and it comes with deceit.
Amy, how about from your lens, authenticity, making tough decisions, and you talked a lot about being that open to feedback. How do you balance those?
That's a great question. For me, what's important from an authenticity perspective is the person I'm sitting here in this office having this conversation with is the same person as soon as I walk out of my office doors today. I am my personal value system in terms of always being upfront. Some might say a little too upfront, a little too direct at times. I'll own that for certain. However, I'm a person who appreciates a straight shooter and just tell me what the issue is. Let's get to it. I can take bad news all day. And having that ability and that value system for me and that degree to say, yes, hey, we're doing this really well. Hey, you know what? We've created a problem or we found an error. All of those things are perfectly okay, as long as we are all okay with things happening. And that's the type of environment that I want to continue to foster with my teams today, because none of us are perfect. And the more we can be good with communicating and taking ownership for the good, for the wins and for the losses, I think the better off we all are. So I don't know if I completely answered your question, but for me, it's really just my own personal value system around being authentic.
I think you touched a lot about this core values and bringing yourself as you walk out of the room. One thing that I often see is obviously you need to be passionate, but then in order to make those tough decisions or call out things the way they are, how do you balance those two things then? Do you find being dispassionate is helpful in those circumstances when things are actually not going well?
I'll start. I don't know that I would call it dispassionate. I think you have to have the confidence and you have to portray that with the decision making. Let's say it's an unpopular decision, Ramesh. One, you've got to make it, right? Separate, as we talked about earlier. But I think, two, you have to boldly and confidently execute and just go forward. You can't be paralyzed and you can't show. That's a time when vulnerability is not as important as we're making this decision and we're going to execute on it. What happens when you do that a couple times is folks that didn't agree with the decision or are detractors see the end result and it starts to sway the whole. So I'm a firm believer in, there's this great book called Execution, it's one of my favorites. Execution drives what's going on in your workplace and silences critics, if you will. So there are times where I think this is important too. We've talked quite a bit about the importance of vulnerability and being real. At the same time, you're leading a company. So there are times when you have to just be bold and not apologize for it. With decision making, with unpopular actions, for the good of the whole. And what I teach my SLT team is you have to remember who we're serving. We're serving each other and we're serving members who have an illness or something's wrong or it's an expense that they can't sustain. So I always go to that as well in we're here for a purpose, for the greater good. And who are we serving today with this decision? So again, I think I talk a lot about swagger in mentoring sessions. I think this is an instance to your question, which really comes down to confidence, timeliness, and swagger. And you just have to own it. And you have to be comfortable doing that.
Amy, your perspective on this?
I don't know that I can say it much better than Carrie has articulated it, if I'm being completely honest. I think she's absolutely point on. And you do have to own your decisions, and you can have the swagger and you can still be kind in communicating the swagger. Everything does not have to be, it's a bad decision or you have to communicate some sort of you can still be kind about it.
Yeah. So you can be kind and still clear about your decision.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And then how do you kind of see enabling your team to make those decisions or get them to be more accountable or get them to kind of take more ownership? How do you kind of move in that direction? And has that been helpful in the organizations that you've been part of?
I'll start on this one. Absolutely. In my current organization, we're working on several large initiatives right now. And we all know where we need to go. But gosh, I'm just grateful for the wonderfully smart and talented people I have at my disposal every day. I mean, I am tremendously grateful for them. And so I'm really, rather than saying, okay, here's what we're going to do, here's the project plan, here's how you're going to do A, B, C, D, and E, I've gone to the place where here's the expected outcome based on your experience and your depth of knowledge. Give me your suggestions and collaborate with your peers on how do we get to this place. And let's continue talking about it. Let's continue iterating on it. And by, again, getting everyone involved, it really does create that accountability without saying you're accountable for A, B, and C. By getting them involved, it's inherent in the process, from at least with the teams that I have the pleasure to lead today.
Yeah, I think Amy's spot on that. I'll concur. It's getting them involved and having them be accountable. I'll give you a specific example from earlier this week. So we had a key partner of ours where they had some misses with implementation. It's a company I've known for a very long time, well respected. And one of our senior operational leaders was leading that. And this has been going on for a couple months. And so there were two lessons here. And then I got the Hail Mary implementation's not going well. And so the first lesson with teaching and accountability as a thought leader was, okay, let's talk about managing up, which is a skill that is learned. So that process was, how could you have managed this up better than waiting? Why would it have been important to raise your hand earlier? Because that doesn't signify failure. It signifies strength in saying, Houston, we have a problem, right? Instead of now we're on a Friday and this feed has to go live by Friday end of day and it's Friday morning and I'm getting the message. I'm exaggerating that a little bit, but it's the gist, right? So that was the first lesson in how do we better manage up? And I've found that that's a lesson that I have to teach a lot. And that's natural because there's no, as I've said before, there's no binder on the manual that says when you go from a director to vice president, here's what you do. Or when you go from a vice president to a C-level, here's what you do. There's no book. And so at each of those levels, the managing up is important. The other lesson we had was when she articulated to me, and she could do that very well internally, about all the things that we had done to try and help that situation with our partner. This was a key. I said, okay, well, we've got to have a discussion, right? We've got this is a contractual issue. This is a trust issue. And then I immediately said to her in the next sentence, you're going to lead that call. and there was a slight, I could see like a visible reaction. Now, to her credit, she didn't say, heck no, right? But what I said to her was this, and this next sentence is the most important. I will be there and I've got you, and you will be prepared for that call. So what do we have to prepare that call? We had the call. She handled 99% of it. Now, mind you, again, this is a call where we're discussing a sticky legal issue with a trusted partner. We hung up, and then I did another thing that people don't do. She did exactly what we needed her to do. The partner was responsive. We're getting it solved. Instead of going on to my next meeting, which I was late for, right? But that wasn't important. What was important was I took this next step, and that was I picked up my phone and I called her and I said, that's what I want to see. And you handled a very difficult situation exceedingly well, and we're going to work together. It's a long-lasting partnership. We'll fix it. So from the beginning of the week and the problem through that call resolution, you could see a heightened confidence. You could see a relief. And there was a deeper connection, I believe. I haven't asked her that, but I believe there was a deeper connection between the two of us. And so that's an example from just this week where I love to teach and I love to transform my ELT members. And I would dare say if we had her on this call with us, she would be able to tell you from that story multiple things she learned. I think it's all about the empowerment. And as Amy said earlier, it's all about the why. I could have very easily just said, okay, I got it, and not involved her in any of that process and handled the legal part and the response and the call. But that wouldn't have taught her anything about how we solve that. I also think it doubled down on the message of the importance of managing up earlier in the process. That's a real life example, but I try to approach everything we do every day with all of those lessons in mind. And what are we teaching today?
This is great. I think that empowering and giving that outright support becomes key to give them that confidence. They can take a shot at the goal. I want to shift gears. Another concept that's pretty important in transformation leadership, and wanted to get how you are approaching this. Do you see yourself as building the company brand, or you talked about authenticity and showing up yourself outside this room, Amy, as you leave this room, or do you see building your personal brand, which becomes part and parcel of the company? How do you see the two worlds coming together?
I'll start. So I love this question because I think people don't talk about it. And it's something that I had to learn. It wasn't innate for me. So I'm old enough that we didn't have social media. I mean, when I was in college, we still had a typewriter, word processor. So I'm aging myself today, but I have had to be a student of all of these new techniques with branding because I wasn't taught this in school. And so I had to learn it and I had to commit to that and I had to understand the importance. So I think having a strong personal brand as a CEO of a company gives your business double the chance to be seen. And it is absolutely critical. It's a rallying point for your employees. It again goes to authenticity. And I think employee engagement is boosted when your employees feel, hey, I work for Carrie. Not only do we deliver and we drive results, she's cool. Like, here are these things that she does personally. She loves racing. She's a professional backgammon player, right? All of those type of things that are fun that translate into business objectives. So we'll use the backgammon example. Having people know that's fun for me, there's no reason to keep that private, right? It's not some trade secret. And it does something else to play in that space against international leaders in the backgammon community. That game is all about stripping down complexity and thinking 8 steps ahead. There's a little bit of luck involved in it too, just like running a company. But it's a complex game. It hinges on foresight, adaptability. And so those are traits that I want folks to know that I have and that I enjoy personally, as well as in leading our company and being a thought leader for the industry. Plus, it's a fun conversational topic. So I firmly believe, and I had to learn this, I firmly believe that your parallel branding in action is hypercritical to your company's success. And going one more step, having the people that work for you focused to their comfort and their style, personal branding also goes straight to our profitability and our company's reputation. So I don't see any downside to it. And I think so many people aren't talking about this. It's always about the company. So I think from a mentoring standpoint, again, for the industry, I would love to do a whole session on this together. Maybe the 3 of us could do a panel at one of the forums, but I think this is critical.
Parallel brand. Love that.
Yes. Yes. Let's call Mike. Let's get that done. Yes.
Yeah.
Amy, what do you think?
I think Carrie is, again, right on. And for me, it really is. The things, it gets back to that personal value system for me. There's nothing in the world, personally or professionally, that I dislike more than being dishonest in some capacity or another. And that's with my children or my spouse. It's something we share collectively. That carries forward into my professional life. And so right, wrong, or indifferent, I will always have no issue communicating what is happening and why it's happening, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And in talking with so many phenomenal people in this space over the years, that really has been, I think, one of the contributing factors to the personal success that I have seen. Because when I'm having a conversation at a business level with someone, they know, understand, and believe that the information that I'm sharing with them is factual and it's coming from the right place to get whatever the conversation may be. And that for me is just something that I value personally more than anything. And I would say if I had to define my own personal brand, it really is about being completely transparent and having a high degree of integrity in everything I do, whether it's, again, sitting at this desk or going to have dinner with my family later on this evening. It's the same things will track regardless of where I am.
Yeah, it is the same person. You got to put it out there in both dimensions. Yes. Amy, maybe I wanted to kind of drill down a bit more, bringing this transformational leadership ideas. How does this translate into things like the world of PBM, the care management, where you've spent a lot of time? How has it helped organizations grow and deliver that impact?
Again, it really gets back to all of the things that we have touched on today. It's really about communication, setting the vision or collaborating and designing vision, communication, and executing on that vision, whether it's a short-term goal or a long-term goal or 10 years from now, being very thoughtful in design and collaboration and communication around those pieces. Because I firmly believe if we do a really good job getting the right people in our doors to sit down and do whatever work it is that we need them to do, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to make sure that they're coming in every day, they're educated, they're engaged, they're inspired, and they really understand why they're sitting in that seat every day. And if we're not doing a good job of articulating that, the growth that people expect will not materialize. I'll say in my prior job, that's one thing that I think we did really, really well is consistently communicate about what was going on in terms of where we're going, growth, product, strategy, and why it was happening, and making sure that everyone who needed to be involved was involved, and even the dissenting voices were included in decision making. And it really was critical to the success that was realized over the course of the years that I was there. It was really an excellent learning experience for me. And then and I was able to carry that forward into this new, again, amazing opportunity to say, hey, here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. Here's how you're part of this. And here's why you do what you do every day. Here's my why for it. And really just being authentic and transparent in terms of what it is that we're doing and getting people excited about it. Because I think people like to be involved. They like to feel as though they're part of something bigger than they are and contributing to something really, really great. And for me, that is what gets me excited every day.
Bringing them along and building that excitement. Kari, yes. How about you in the world of TPAs? How has this translated into impact?
Oh, direct impact with members. So Boone Chapman's one of the few TPAs where we do care navigation in-house with our own nursing team. So they are live with our members, helping them navigate the complex healthcare industry and healthcare system. So the empathy, the compassion, the being real, and coupled with direct contracting, care navigation, making tough decisions, all of that combines in that role 24/7 to drive cost savings for our clients. I saw some amazing stats for 2024 for our company. This is how that translates to our bottom line and our clients' bottom line. Usually when we look at care navigation, the numbers are low for advocacy. So I'm going to be kind. I'm going to say 20% and below for a population. The thought leadership in those roles and having them more involved with our business operations and understanding the nexus between how we're performing as a company and their performance, and then how that translates into cost containment for our clients is something I love putting together. It's a puzzle that we put together and we refine and articulate daily. 52% traction with our care navigation team. That is unheard of, to the tune of millions of dollars of savings for our clients through things like direct contracting, surgical care navigation away from big hospital systems. Another pet project of mine, virtual physical therapy. I remember when I was one of the first people in the industry to talk about this, and I will admit, when I first had this come up, I thought it was crazy, right? But as we sit here now, we do this every day. There are companies that do just this that we partner with. And so it is on the cutting edge of care navigation and directly impacts our success in utilization and cost containment, which impacts our bottom line, impacts our clients' bottom line. So I couldn't be happier about incorporating that team and their skill set, which is completely different than my other functional top leaders, and bringing them into the fold, sharing their compassion. They're nurses by trade. And so that's a whole different training background than, say, a chief operating officer or someone that's operational based. And then I enjoy watching them work together. So there's a cross-functional element of that I think is so important. So, when we look at thought leadership, it should consume your entire organization and be specific to those areas, and then feed up, in my vision, to the whole and the overall success of the company. But that area was on my mind today because we're going to be doing a campaign and congratulating them on their success. And it really goes to the heart of that's real for them. And they resonate with those patients.
Our conversation has ranged on different areas. They all feed into this transformational leadership. If both of you had to think back to a time where, whether consciously or subconsciously, you switched to this transformational leadership, what did you do different? And could you overlay some sort of impact that you saw after that?
I'll start. I remember the day, and I'll tell you what happened. It's a very personal story. So I'm of an age where we were taught something completely different. We were taught that great leaders don't show vulnerability, that great leaders just make decisions and you communicate them and you on to the next thing. In college and early on practice, early in my career, that's what people were expected to do. The other funny thing for me now is you were taught, don't bring your personal life into the workplace, especially as a woman, right? Don't do that. It'll hurt your career. And so that's all I knew and all I saw. I had a fantastic mentor that I worked for who said to me over coffee one morning, you need to let people start seeing your vulnerable side. And he said to me, I see it, and you're a very warm person, but what's coming through is that you're just this automatic, kind of like this robot decision maker. And my training adds to that, right? Because I'm trained as an attorney. So we're trained to be unemotional, to make decisions, to not get emotionally involved with clients into difficult decisions. So all of that led up to that conversation. And I will be honest with you and say that when we first had the conversation, I was like, I don't do that. Right? And so but then there was this epiphany because I thought so highly of him, and he and I are still very good friends. He's been a reference for me. As Amy was saying, it's a lifelong mentor. And I had this moment after that conversation, probably within a couple of days, where I thought, okay, he's never steered me wrong, and he has directly impacted my career. Let's start bringing that wall down. And let's let people start seeing my sense of humor more. Let's start showing people how we get up to the decision-making process and what feeds into that versus just saying, here's the decision. Let's laugh more. Let's share more about our private lives. And I would tell you the difference was immediate and night and day. And so I have him to thank for poking me. But I also will tell you that I'm proud to talk about and teach and share that, even though it's poking at myself too, but to share that transformation because it is real. And I would tell you that I would not have had the success that I have had in this industry had I not had that conversation with him and had I not followed his advice. I've had to come in and completely remake companies in a very competitive industry. You don't do that if you are not a thought leader. You don't do it well. And so that's my personal evolution. And I share that story very willingly because you have to be open to change. So the leader I am now is slightly different than what I was 5 years ago, slightly different than 10 years ago, dramatically different than I was when I was 30, and for the good. And so I think the last thing I'll leave you with on that question is you also have to be a lifelong learner. And I expect that of my team and of myself, and that you are constantly transforming and learning and modifying your solutions in the marketplace, but also your personal brand and your identity and how you deal with your employees.
That's great. Thank you, Kari.
Yeah.
Amy, your lens on this, an event situation.
It definitely was an evolution, and mine was similar to Kari's with one additional prong. I had, up till about 2016, I was pretty, to Kari's point, it was very black and white. You make decisions on your own. This is just what has to happen, and you got to push through, right? And results were good. But I was a little rough around the edges, probably tough in hindsight, and not tough in a good way, if I'm being honest. Unfortunately, or fortunately, how you look at it, I had a tremendous personal tragedy within my family. And for me, that really flipped a switch in my thought process and said, I need to be different. I need to think and act and behave differently. And so because of that, I started gradually working on myself, if I'm being honest, in terms of how I worked with teams, what I needed to do to improve business operations, personally, all of the pieces coming together. And then combining that with the amazing support of my lifelong or career-long mentor, who then really continued to act as a tremendous sounding block to me and give me the confidence to seek other larger opportunities, really has helped get me to where I am today. Because to Kari's point, the leader I am at a high decade number compared to the leader I was in a lower decade number and 10 years, 20 years ago, I'm a much different person. And hopefully even in 2 to 3 years from now, I'll look back and continue to evolve, because the work is never done from my perspective. It's always being really self-critical, if you will, and really looking inward in terms of, okay, what could I have done better? How could I have improved that? Did that conversation go how I wanted it to go? How do I deliver this message to this person because of their needs? And how do I meet all of these expectations for everyone? So it's just a constant evolutionary journey. So talk to me again in 5 years and I may have a completely different story to tell you.
Well, that's great. This is fantastic to constantly kind of innovate yourself and invent yourself, and have your core values that are helping you drive that change. So this is great, great kind of blueprint for many of our listeners. And there's so many nuggets here from our discussion. Kari and Amy, you guys have shared so much of different ideas and concepts for this transformation leadership. Any kind of last thoughts for our listeners?
I just want to say thanks and how much fun. I've enjoyed the conversation tremendously. And I applaud you for being a leader in our industry and bringing this type of content and the opportunity to just share with those younger. We have this big generational gap happening right now in our industry, as you all know. And I love the opportunity to have campfire storytelling sessions, right? Where we are giving of ourselves and we're being transparent no matter what the question or how tough the topic. And I applaud what you've done for the industry, Ramesh, both with your company, but also just for thought leadership. It's a pleasure always spending time with you. And Amy and I are like the Wonder Twins. So anytime I have a chance to interact with her professionally or personally, I take her up on that and enjoy it tremendously.
Well, thank you, Kari, for that kind words, and I appreciate that. And thank you to both you, Amy and Kari, for spending the time today. And I think maybe we should take you up on your offer to gather around a fire pit at one of these industry events, and let's get some of the younger people to learn from what that you guys have done. So I will be looking out, checking to see if you're available at one of those conferences.
I would love to join you around that setting and just give back and tell stories and share. And I'm in, all in for me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you later. Bye, guys.
Bye.
And I would like to thank Valence Health, our sponsor of this show. Please join us again for another podcast in the series brought to you by HCAA's Voices of Self-Funding. Please like and share so we can build a community of like-minded people. And tell us about topics that we should bring to you next. Please watch your email for updates and upcoming guests. I'm your host, Ramesh Kumar of Saki Point Health.